So several years ago, before I really got into crafting a lot, and certainly before Steamy Tech was a gleam in our eyes, I discovered really cool things you could do to clocks. And I bought a couple of clock kits at a local hobby store and made some really cool clocks out of them. So when we were thinking about what we wanted to put in a box that was talking about time and navigation, we thought we would include a clock. And rather than trying to build a geared clock, and those are a little bit challenging, we decided we'd do something a little bit different, and we would build a clock of gears. So what we've given you is a really pretty box here that's going to use a traditional quartz clock movement in it with a battery to be able to put it together. You should have in your package a kit that says Kinetic Clock. You're also going to have a clock movement set and also some AA batteries. So go ahead and pull those out. Give me 1 second and then we'll take the kit apart and look at the pieces so you can get them ready to make your very own cool kinetic clock. All right, here's a close-up view of our clock, and you can see that we've got a set of gears on the front we're going to need to put together, the hands from the movement. We've also got on the back a little door that will open and close for you and a set of feet on the bottom. So let me open up the bag and we'll talk about the pieces that are parts that are in here so you can decide how you want to color your clock. So we'll grab the bag and I'll open it up. You can leave the movement closed. I would leave it closed as long as possible because those hands are pretty fragile and we don't want them to bend on you. We'll open up our bag. And the pieces are pretty easy in this to tell how they're going to go together. The back has three pieces when it's assembled. It has the back piece with the door that'll open up and out with hinges, as well as this little piece on the bottom that'll give us a flap so it's easy to open and close. We'll put that aside. Then we have the front. Now on the front, if you look at your circle of holes, you'll notice that you've got one extra little circle right here. That extra little circle is meant for this extra gear up on the side. It's optional, but I think you probably will want it. And you also have a round circle that you can put on the top that's going to give us a little bit of extra thickness to attach our clock to so it'll all stay nice and smooth. And again, there's nice pattern alignment here so you can get those two pieces together. The last set of pieces are 4 rectangular pieces. These are going to be our 4 box sides. You'll notice one of them has an extra set of little circles. Those are our feet markers, so you'll want to make sure that you plan for that to be the bottom if you're doing pretty fancy decorating. That piece is going to be the bottom, but we're just going to put these together so each side is separate like so. Finally, you've got a gear bag, and in this case, your gear bag is going to have your 12 numeral gears, plus that one extra gear if you want to use it as a drive gear. So let me pull these out, and we'll take a look at them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my extra one with nothing on it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We've also got a bag of hardware, quite a lot of hardware actually for this smaller box. I'm going to put it on the side and we'll use it when we actually do the assembly. And that's all you need for your pieces to put your kinetic clock together. So what you want to do now is pause the video, sand your wood, at least please sand the front piece where the gears are going to go around the outside there. And probably also use your sandpaper on the back side of these gears to make them run more smoothly. Everything else is okay as it is if you don't want to sand it. I think it all feels much better in your hand and looks a little prettier sanded. So go do that, sand, and then decorate however you want to. If you had the February box, you can use those pretty colored shiny markers from the January box to make copper and silver gears. You can use the wood stains on it, whatever you want to do to make your clock your own. I think there's some room for a lot of fun pattern manipulation here. So go have fun. Now that you've got all your pieces decorated and laid out in front of you, let's review again the pieces you have, and then we'll look at the hardware that was included in your package as well. You're going to have a front and a circle for the front. You're going to have a back, a door for the back, and an extra little panel, plus your four side pieces, plus the quartz clock movement. Please leave it in its packaging until we're ready to use it, and 13 gears. Let me get this out of the way, and then we'll take a look at the hardware that was included as well. What do we have for hardware? Quite a lot, actually. We have a set of feet. We have 2 hinges. And then we're going to look at screws as being part of several different things. First, we want to find the 8¼ hinges that are going to be part of the 8¼ screws, not hinges, that are going to be in your hinge kit that you need to be able to put your hinges together with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can get those nice little screws out of our way. There's the 8th one. Then we also have, we'll put them right here so you can still see that I'm not cheating. We should also have the 13 screws that we need for our gears. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. And last but not least, 16 screws that we can use to put around the outside edge to hold the box together. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then I'm going to match the nuts up to those. 2, 4, 6, 8 to go with the hinges. And we'll push all of that over here. 16 to go, put the sides together. 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16. And then 13, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. How did I miss 2 over here? Those must be along there. And now our screws are sorted and we're ready to start. So I'm going to recommend that you start by putting your front of your clock together. And what we want to start with then is, let's start with putting the gears on and getting these 2 layers together. So notice first that I've got this center piece that wants to go in. And it has to be lined up right because I have to make sure I have enough room for my center clock to go through. So I'm going to trust myself to glue this together now. You can wait and glue it together, glue this piece on when you go ahead and put your clock movement together. That is completely up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and set it on here like so, and make sure I get it lined up perfectly so my lines go through all the way just the way I want them to go. Now I told you that this place with this extra screw was going to be my top corner to give me a drive gear. Again, this is an optional one. You don't need to use it, but as you add every screw, you're going to take the gear, put the little 3/8" screw through it, put a drop of glue on the nut, on the head of the screw, and then take your nut, put your nut on it. Make sure it's nice and loose. Typically you want to go just till you're flat with the head of the nut, and make sure your gear still spins well. And then you're going to do this all the way around. Now, here's the fun thing about putting this together. And I apologize that it's going to be a little upside down in the video, but I'm not sure I could cope with doing this upside down. You got to decide when you finish this, if you want these gears to be completely willy-nilly and let somebody put them together however they want, make them spin so whichever number they want is vertical, or you want them all to be perfectly aligned to vertical. So I'm going to start with 12. And then I'm just going to slowly work my way around the piece, adding a gear, a screw, and a nut to each gear around the piece as I go. So I'm going to make sure 12 is lined up perfectly straight. And then I'm going to go to 1, and I'm going to say, okay, so I like that alignment for 1. And we'll add the 1. And maybe when we produce this video, we'll speed it up right here so you don't have to watch all of the time it takes to do this alignment. But my guess is, if you're doing it with me, you can still just sit and listen. Now notice the 2 is the one that the drive gear is actually going to attach to. So I'm going to put the 2 in. Again, I'm trying to get things kind of straight and lined up, but they don't have to be perfect in my world. So we'll put the 2 in, put it through. Everybody has been asking Steamy Tech if we make clocks, and we decided it was finally time. The other person I want to tell you about is Nick Sayer. Runs a company he calls Geppetto Electronics. He'll actually be at Maker Faire this year. And Nick makes something he calls a crazy clock. So we've included a clockwork with your box of making, but if you like things to be different, Nick has a whole line of crazy clock movements that he'll sell you that you can replace this one with. And they do all kinds of different things. He has one that runs kind of lazy and it mostly keeps up, but sometimes it's slow. He has all kinds of different movements. And you'll want to see Nick at Maker Faire or find Geppetto Electronics on Tendy if you're interested in swapping out my clockworks that I've included for something a little bit different. I think you'll really like what Nick does if you want other kinds of clocks. You could even, from Nick, get a lunar clock and have the clock movement that he gives you run along the phases of the moon. But we're using a simple clock movement just to make it all nice and consistent. Gotta find the 5. You also want to be careful when you're doing this that you make sure you keep spinning them and that you don't end up with glue sliding through the hole when you're upside down. And don't confuse the 6 and the 9. That's really easy to do here. Making sure that your glue doesn't end up going through and sticking a gear down. So keep spinning it. And when you're done, spin it a few times and then make sure it lays flat so glue hasn't slid down through the wood and stuck your gears down on the front, or you will be very sad. Or I will be very sad or something. 7. Try not to lose your nuts. That one's good. I'm still spinning nicely. 8. Now that I've walked you through all of this, of course, I should tell you that you could turn those gears over and make them say or be anything you want them to be. You could always take the screws out and start from scratch too, but the beauty of all these projects is that you're not stuck with our design. You actually can do whatever you want to with them. We thought making the clock a geared clock was kind of cool because it was a geared clock in more than one way, but it's completely your choice. You could turn the box completely inside out even and give yourself a completely bare canvas to work on if you wanted to. Here's 11, it better go on the 11 side and not on the 10 side. Still spinning perfectly smoothly, and last but not least, I'm going to add this one. Put the 10 in, and I decided not to pay attention to alignment, which I think is kind of fun. Okay, perfect. We've got the screws and hardware in for the front side of the clock. Let's work on the back side of the clock next and put it together, and we'll save opening the movement for just before we put the box together. So we're going to use our hinges that came with, and we're going to set them here and here, and use our little 1/4-inch screws to put our hinges on. So we're going to repeat that same process we just did. But in this case, what we're doing is we're working on putting our screws on the back of the box. So let's see what that looks like. It's hard to decide what the easiest way to do this is. I've kind of moved to, it's easier to put one hinge at a time on the door itself, but the choices are yours. And the other choice you're going to make here is, do you want to put glue on them as you put them together and leave them a little bit loose, or do you want to wait and just put glue on the backs of all of them once you've assembled it? Because you're going to have to be able to slide the metal around just a little bit to get it to go into the box correctly. So your choice. I'm going to do it this way, but if you want to wait and adjust your hinges and tighten them all down completely tight after you've got them on your box, that's a perfectly valid way to do this. And I would never tell anybody exactly how they had to build something. Just not my style. Especially since you're not here and I can't look over your shoulder. So 2 more dots of glue. Two more nuts. Drop this into our frame. And this is the hardest part, is getting these screws to go into the back when we've got our door just sitting in it part way. So I'm going to put the first one in. If I'm coordinated enough to do that. Put the first one in. Like I said, you might have to move things around a little bit. Go ahead and put my dot of glue on that. Bring this other flap up and get it started, and then I can adjust from there. My 2 last nut screws and my 2 last nuts. And now my hinges are nicely attached, and you can tighten them down a little bit more with your screwdriver if you want to, and I'm ready to put the last piece of the door together. So now, I'm going to put a strip of glue across below the line there, and I'm going to take this piece, get it all lined up nicely, and that will give us a flap that we can then use to work on to put this together. And that didn't stick. Sometimes gravity is really annoying, isn't it? So now I have a pretty little door flap on my door. I can set that aside and let it finish drying, and we can start putting the box together. So now I'm going to take my front again. I know which corner I want to have be the upper right. And I know that I want this piece with my little circles on it to be the bottom. So I'm going to start with this bottom piece. And let's get this bottom piece attached in. So we're going to take this, and I'm going to lean it like this for the moment. Now, you can glue these together. I am just going to use screws and attach it with screws and tighten the screws down really well. If you want to glue it together first, you can certainly do that as well. So let's start with putting this nut in here. We'll put a little glue on this screw. This is probably easier if you haven't done it a bunch with two people. Find your mom, dad, significant other, best friend, whatever you want to do to help you at least get the first couple of screws in. And I've now got this screw in and attached, and I've tightened it down enough it's not going anywhere, and I can do the second one now. And I'm just going to set it here. Use my fingers to hold that and keep it from moving. Put a dot of glue on my nut. And drop my nut through. And screw those together. That was the hardest one. Once you got that one done, it's all much easier from there. But it's always easier to get that all glued in and get the box started. So I've got my bottom piece with my place for my feet. And I've got my top right gear here. So now I can just pick any side I want. And I can attach any side I want next. Now what I'm going to do is this side now has the little hole on it. So I need to make the one with the hole on the end notch in there. Like so. We'll go ahead and drop the screw into the side, the nut into the side, take our screw. I don't know why it is that I can't get nuts and screws straight in my head. Put some glue on your screw, drop it into the side, grab your screwdriver and screw it in. And then I can just go around the box and do that on these other three screws on this side. Slide them into the hole, hold them with my hand. Drop my nut in, I screw in. See, I told you I can't get those straight. Tighten that screw in, make sure the nut doesn't go away. Come down here, do this on this second one on this side. When we do the back, we're only going to have 4, but because of the way the gears were, I couldn't easily put them in the middle, and I didn't want one off to the side on this, so I'm going to put my drop of glue on. Pick my screw up and drop it in the hole. tighten it into the nut. Continue going around. We'll add another piece here on our box. Maybe it's easier to put one of these side ones in first. So we'll get that guy going. Get us a little bit more attached in the middle. Everybody's going to figure out their own way to do this. You can also use Loctite instead of glue if you'd rather. It makes it a little easier to take apart if you need to take it apart for some reason. We'll do this one next, and then we'll go back and do that side one. And I'm just slowly working through my screw set here, getting lower and lower as we go. There aren't so many pieces in this project. Sometimes we do projects that have lots of pieces, but this one's not quite so bad. Okay, I'm going to come back up to this side and stick this one in. More glue on my screws. Like I said, if you wanted to glue it together, glue the wood together before you put the screws in, you could do that. If you wanted to screw it together like this and then run a bead of glue on the inside, you could do that. It's all about how strong you feel like it needs to be. Okay, I'm ready for my last side. So now we got to make sure that I've got the innies and the outies going correctly. And slip this in. That's perfect. So I'm going to put my nut in here. Put some glue on my screw. Go ahead and get that lined up and screw that in. I can do that same thing on this other corner now. Drop my nut in nice and flat. Put a little glue on my screw. Pick it up, and yes, you're going to get glue on your fingers. If you don't get any glue on your fingers, you're not doing it right. But please make sure to not touch your fingers together when they're gluey, because we don't want you gluing your fingers together. Two more. Now this one I can actually sit flat, so you can see that I can just set that nut in there and use two hands to put the glue in. The challenge with doing that, as I'm adding sides one at a time, of course, is that the sides won't let it sit flat till I get the last side on. So, but this is the other way to add these, is just to make sure your slot for your nut is nice and flat and to slide it in. And since the back is open, if you happen to push it through, you can just pick it up from the other side. Okay, push the last nut on the front. My front is still spinning nice and smoothly. I've got a really pretty clock, getting very close to done. And now, we're ready for the clockworks. So now that you have your face together and the sides of your box together, let's put the back on before we go ahead and open the clock movement. So I'm going to flip it over. make sure I know where I want the top to be, which is there. All right, so this is the top on this side. I'm going to flip my back panel such that it sits on like this. Doing this first makes it just a little easier to deal with the getting the screws in right. You have a small advantage here because you can open the back up and pull it back out if you were to drop one through. You can also stick your hands in it to hold it still, which is what I'm going to do in this case. I'm going to take advantage of both gravity and the hole in the back of the box. And we'll see how I do with getting things to go where I want them to go. I'm going to add a little bit of glue here. And we'll put that through like so. To this side, drop this in, put glue on my screw. Put it through the hole. And as always, if you get glue on it and you don't want it there, you can wipe it off with your spare cloth. Make sure this all looks good. Put my third one in here. Put some glue on the screw. The order for these two steps really is completely up to you. You can put the clock movement in first, but that makes it a little bit harder, and you don't have a nice flat surface that you can push against without worrying about damaging something. So it's probably easier just to put this on first, unless you have really big hands. Last but not least, you drop this in. And now my box back is complete, my front is complete, all my screws are here and still spinning. On the bottom where I've got my circles, I'm going to put 4 drops of glue and then put my feet on. And if you get too much glue, again, you can wipe that off. Just my indicator for where the feet want to go. This was designed to be a table clock. You can turn it into a wall clock by getting some picture hanging kit and using wood screws in the soft back of the box. I gave you enough space above to be able to do that if that's what you want to do, but I think it's going to look really nice as a table clock. All right, so now we're ready for the clock movement. So when you open your package, what you're going to see is 3 little hands. Be very, very gentle with them. They bend really easily. A second hand, an hour hand, and a minute hand. And you're also going to have your clockworks. It will be set something like this. We'll pop this back screw, this front little teeny tiny screw off of it. Try not to lose it. You'll also have a big screw here that you want to remove, as well as a washer. And this back plate gives us some compression for when we screw it together. I've already put a battery in this one, but you can grab one of your AA batteries and drop it into that slot. It works much better to actually put the battery in the positive side first and then in the negative side. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it through the hole in my box that I've built, making sure that up is where I want it to be. Now they've given you this washer and the instructions say to use it. I think for this thickness of wood, depending on how much sanding you did, you're probably a little better off without it. And I'm going to start by loosely screwing this nut down just with my fingers. And then to make it stay, what I'm actually going to do is hold the nut with my finger and spin the clockworks on the inside around till it starts to grab. If you've got a pair of pliers, you can use it to grab them even tighter, but you'll probably be just fine with tightening it like this. Get it so that the battery is back at the bottom on the inside and your clock is nice and seated. And at that point, we're ready to put the hands on. So what we'll do, I'm going to turn this around upside down so you guys can see it the correct directions. I'm going to start with my hour hand. Make sure it's been unbent and is nice and straight. And it has a lip on one side, and if you look at the pictures on the back of the package, it will show you that that lip wants to go down. And we're going to pressure fit this on. And I always think it's easier to start at noon or midnight, at 12 anyway. And I'm going to push this on and make sure that's on nice and perfectly straight. And pressure fit, and you probably won't be able to turn it very much. Please don't try, you'll break it if you do. Then I'm going to take my minute hand and I'm going to spin it around till it goes on the clock top. And you'll notice I'm sideways here, so I'm going to push it back up and hold onto this so that they both end up at midnight. That's the key, is you want those two hands when we're right at midnight to be both straight up. And then I'm going to take my little nut and tighten that down. Once that's tightened down, you'll be able to set the clock either by spinning the minute hand around or by spinning the clock set mechanism in the back of the unit. So we're going to do spin, spin, spin here and get this on nice and tight so that that hand doesn't come loose. And you'll notice now I can spin it around and adjust the time appropriately. It's 11:52 here, so I'm going to set it to there. And now I'm going to take my second hand. It has a little hole in the bottom. All we need to do with that is drop that little hole in the bottom onto this little peg in the middle. And now my second hand is starting to go. You don't have to use the second hand, as I said earlier, but if you wanted, that's all it takes to get it going. And now you have a beautiful geared clock. Thanks.